Retro.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to take a look at something other than GT Sport, which I know is probably a shock to you all. It's just been consuming me lately, just how much stuff I've had to cover on there. But what I wanted to do is get back into looking at different games, and as you've probably seen from the thumbnail, today's video game that I'm going to be taking a look at is Virtua Racing on the Nintendo Switch. Now, it did come out quite a while ago in Japan, in fact back in March, but it took a little while to get over to European shores. But now it's out over here. I wanted to take a look at it, just show you what it's all about, and explain the game in case it's something that you've never come across before. Now, Virtua Racing, in case, like I say, it's something you've never come across before, is actually a really important title as part of sort of racing game history. And it's one of those games that we've never really been able to enjoy at home quite as much as you ever did back in the arcade. Every sort of attempt to bring it to a home release has never worked that well. There was a very, very flawed version on the Mega Drive. Also, Sega Saturn, there was a release that wasn't exactly great. And on top of that, they then tried to completely rebuild it from the ground up as a PlayStation 2 release. But again, it just never felt like it did back in the arcade. But what we've got now is actually very special, and it's come out as part of the Sega Ages collection, courtesy of M2. Now, these are the guys that did all of the previous remasters on the 3DS, and yeah, they've definitely got some talent behind them. The previous games have always been very impressive, and yeah, this is no different at all. Back when this was released in 1992, it was the first ever real, true 3D racing game. Sure, you had other things like Outrun, things like that, which looked 3D, but they were still using 2D technology. This actually used polygons to shape a full 3D world, and it had just never really been seen before. On top of that, this ran at a very smooth 30 frames per second, which by today's standards sounds pretty terrible, but back then was revolutionary. No one had ever seen that before. The cabinet it came in also had the first ever 16:9 panel, so it was the first unit to actually run widescreen. And up until now, no other game had ever allowed you to change views within your car, and this one did, and it was just one of those features that has now stuck with gaming ever since, and we see it in every single game we play now. So, like I said, this Switch version is very special indeed, because what they've managed to do is actually keep all of those features that were previously in the game at the arcade. They're all still there, and they all run just as well as they did. However, think of this as more of a plus version of the game, because what they've done is they've actually upped that frame rate to 60 frames per second, and they've done a fantastic job of it. There's no stuttering, there's no glitches. It looks as good as it always did, but it just runs even smoother now. On the Switch, it now runs in glorious 1080p when docked to the television, and even if you take it portable, it will run at 720p, which is a huge improvement over the original resolution. The draw distance is also a massive improvement over the original, where the hardware really limited it back in the day to only being able to see a certain amount of distance in front of you. It's now fully unlocked, and you can actually see the entire map from certain views. This does make for some interesting clipping and some strange sort of viewpoints, but at the same time, it's just great to be able to see everything as it was intended in the first place. And like I said before, everything else has just been beautifully brought over from that arcade version of this game, and it's just perfect on here. And this is an exciting thing, certainly from a Nintendo Switch owner's point of view. There's not many racing games out there, or nothing that really excites that much. A lot of them are just mobile phone games that have been ported over, and a lot of them, even if they're not mobile phone games, feel like they are, because the quality is just not particularly good. So this is pretty exciting. I mean, from a Sega Ages point of view, if the collection continues to grow, does this mean that in the future we're actually going to finally get a good, solid port of the original Sega Rally Championship from the arcade? It's something that I would absolutely love to see. We've had multiple games released over the years sort of trying to emulate it to a degree, never doing it particularly well, and things like Sega Rally 2 just weren't really anything like the original when it came to the gameplay side of things. So that's definitely something that I would love to see, and I'm really hoping it happens, and I'm hoping it comes to Switch because it will be portable and it will just be that much better for it. But moving back to Virtua Racing, how does it feel to play? And if it's something that you've never picked up before and you're into arcade racing, as I said before, I feel like you need to go and try this. This really did pave the way for everything that you're playing today. but from a gameplay point of view it feels just like it did on the original, which by today's standards isn't going to feel the best in the world. But that being said, there are some subtle handling mechanics that you're going to have to get used to, and certainly from a challenge point of view it does get pretty difficult once you get up to the expert levels, or even the medium when you're first starting out. It works like most arcade races of its era, which is you've got timed checkpoints and you have to get through those before the time runs out for the race to continue, but in the meantime you're also trying to beat the opposition. As you're pushing harder and harder trying to get that victory, you'll soon realise that there's many easy ways to spin your car out, and even if you touch a side it really hinders your acceleration and will slow you right down. So like I say, there's no real room here for error, which just adds to the challenge and makes it even more rewarding when you do finally get that win. On this version they've actually given you up to 8-player split screen. It does drop down to 30 FPS, but from what I've heard it still runs super smooth. I haven't actually given it a go in that mode yet, but it does sound interesting. The reason they've given you that is because, again, the original arcade system you could have up to 8 machines all strung together, so you could play simultaneously against all those other competitors. So it's really nice to see that they've gone that extra mile and actually given us that feature. And on top of that, obviously this is online compatible. Your scores will be uploaded whenever you finish a race, and you can see how you're doing against everybody else. I've really enjoyed my time with Virtua Racing, and I'm so glad I did go and pick it up. I feel like if you haven't tried this yet and you are into this genre at all, you owe it to yourself to just give it a go. Like I say, it's not going to feel great compared to today's races, but at the same time, when you just look back at what this game actually means for the industry as a whole, it's worth checking out just so you can take in a little bit of that history. I really hope you've enjoyed today's video. It's been a little bit different. I've only barely touched the surface when it comes to this, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what to expect if you did want to go and buy it. Let me know down in the comment section if you would like to see more videos like this here on the channel. I'm going to try and branch out a little bit and certainly do some live gameplays of certain things, but we'll have to see how those go because my live commentary is always very interesting. Make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you all on the next one.